Hey, everybody, welcome back to Lettermen Row. I am Austin Ward. That's Jeremy Birmingham and Spencer Holbrook. And this is, I don't know, the off-season report. The position preview, I don't know. It's brought to you by Buyers Auto. That's really all that matters. We're talking about running backs. It's running back week at Lettermen Row. So, Berm, who's going to be the starting running back?
When?
Week one. We'll go week by week.
Mayan Williams.
Okay. Just leaving it out there. No explanation needed. Spencer?
I'm going to go Marcus Crowley.
Well, you guys are really filling this airspace. I love it. So we're off to a great start. Why Mayan Williams, Berm?
I just think that he has the experience. He has the tape at the end of last year showed really what he's capable of, and he did it against the best competition Ohio State faced all year. The games that he got a chance to get in and play, he showed some wiggle, he showed burst, he showed that he's a kid that is not going to be afraid of contact. And I think with the young quarterback, especially coming out of the gate here, their Buckeyes are going to want someone that's just a tough runner that's going to go out there and pick up some tough yards. I know Master Teague can do that as well, but I think that Mayan gives the best ability to do it. And make things happen with his feet. And then I think you'll see the Buckeyes work Trey Henderson into that mix over the first couple of weeks. But I think Mayan, and we were at the camp last Wednesday, and there's quarterbacks and wide receivers and only one tailback out there, and it was Mayan Williams, and he looks the part. I mean, the kid has worked extremely hard to get himself into shape and make himself into a Big Ten running back. And I was much more bullish on him coming out of high school than a lot of people were. And I think that he's a kid that just plays with a serious chip on his shoulder. And I would imagine that all the talk about Trey Henderson and Evan Pryor and all these other running backs is only just making that grow.
And I think, Berm, when you talk about him doing it against the best competition that Ohio State faced, the fact that he wasn't available in the title game, would it have tipped it one way or the other? Probably not, the way that Alabama team was rolling. But with Mayan Williams home in Columbus, due to the COVID protocol, clearly Ohio State was missing somebody with some of that wiggle. Marcus Crowley was not fully healthy yet on that knee. He was pressed into action in that game. We know what some of the ceiling limitations are for Master Teague when you get into those.
And Master was hurt. I mean, Master wasn't full speed either. He wasn't able to play in the second half of the Northwestern game. Not that he would have had to, the way that Trey Sermon was running, but clearly against Alabama, that straight line, straight ahead style of tailback is not going to work. I mean, and it certainly could have made a difference in just keeping the Buckeyes close, or at least keeping the running game a part of the offense.
Yeah, I just think he's more dynamic and he has more versatility than Master Teague. And I think when you're having this conversation about who might get the first carry of the season, I think that's probably what elevates Mayan Williams. He was definitely underrated, I think, by most people as a recruit, and he was viewed as a throw-in, afterthought, whatever you want to call it, after having two previous commits and decommitments over that summer. And it's like, well, I think they got a good one in Mayan Williams, and you just looked at that body type when he was in high school, and maybe it was hard to project how that would work at the next level, but he's definitely got more speed than people give him credit for. He's not just a bowling ball, meatball, whatever. I mean, he is smaller, but he uses that to his advantage. Still very physical, still great upside. And the other part of this, I think Marcus Crowley, Spencer, to your point, will be heavily involved as well once you give him another 6, 7, 8 months to get comfortable with the knee. He talked about how meaningful that would be heading into spring camp, that he thought he was ready to play in the national title game, and then had a conversation with Tony Alford right in the middle and was like, I'm not there yet. I think back all the time to those 5-6 carries against Maryland in 2019, right before he got hurt. Man, that looked like a guy who could be the starting running back at Ohio State and was really building for something. And the same thing happened with him when he was out, where you wonder, when J.K. Dobbins gets hurt against Clemson in the Fiesta Bowl, maybe someone with Crowley, the way that he was building, would have helped the same way Mayan Williams could have this year. It's unfortunate that Ohio State had to deal with that twice in a row at that position, but it's also why having so much depth is important for the Buckeyes in the backfield.
Yeah, and you kind of stole we're on the same brain wavelength here, because I was going to talk about those carries against Maryland and the way he cut and the way he had that wiggle that we talk about the Ohio State running back needing. And I think that Alabama appearance hurt him in a way because it could have rattled his confidence and saying like, I'm not ready for this. But I think it also can really help him going into this summer and trying to prove himself. Just like Mayan Williams hears the noise of these new guys coming in. Marcus Crowley is a guy who was the Florida Gatorade Player of the Year in a state that is just absolutely loaded with talent. He knows what he's doing when he gets the ball in his hands. He's really shifty, really quick, really athletic. I'm really excited to see what he can do when he gets on the field, when he's finally back healthy, trying to prove himself in this deep running back room. I just think he's going to play with a chip on his shoulder, and he can come in and take that starting spot week 1. I don't know if he can keep it for the entire season, but I think he can make an impact early in the season against Minnesota and Oregon.
Ultimately, I think it's going to piss people off because there's a contingency of the Ohio State fan base that wants there to be that bell cow running back. And I don't know that that's going to happen this year. It's certainly not going to happen in the early part of the year as the Buckeyes are trying to sort through the options of Mayan Williams and Master Teague and Marcus Crowley, Trey Henderson, how you get Evan Pryor into the mix, how you get Steel Chambers if he's still playing running back. Who knows? I mean, there's the depth at linebacker, and we've talked about that over and over, that there's an opportunity for Steel Chambers maybe to get more playing time there. Since the Buckeyes are playing long snappers at the position. So you don't know exactly what they're going to do, but you know that they're going to give each of these kids a chance to make some plays. And there is a separator in talent, and I've talked about it before, but the difference in the upside in Trey Henderson versus everyone else is it's substantial. And so I think the Buckeyes are going to want to be deliberate with Trey and making sure that they don't put too much on his shoulders right away. And it's probably beneficial to him that he's not in a situation that J.K. Dobbins was in when J.K. came in 2017, where he had to be the guy right away. But I think that it's going to be hard to keep TreVeyon Henderson, if he stays healthy, off of the field.
Well, that's what I wonder about, Byrne, because you think about the way that Tony Alford may have intended to manage J.K. Dobbins early with Mike Weber being the starter. And then I think it was a hamstring right before that Indiana game. Like, okay, well, you got no choice. You got to go do it. And then one of the most impressive freshman debuts that you're ever going to see. And it's like, okay, well, those plans immediately changed. So, can TreVeyon Henderson do that? Those 3 other guys are probably not all going to get hurt at once, where TreVeyon has to go out there and take the first carry of the season. But he's going to get attempts in that first game. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And that could be, you talked about a running back by committee. You're looking at probably 4 guys at least who could or should touch the football out of that backfield for Ohio State in week 1. And I know I say this all the time. You think back to tight ends week, and I'm like, well, you're not going to throw it to him 5 times a game because everybody else needs touches. How do you manage that really if you're Tony Alford and you want to get a good feel for what that pecking order should be like? You're going to play a pretty solid defense on the road in a Big Ten game, and you got Oregon in week 2, which we know what kind of talent they will have on that side of the football coming back this year. Mario Cristobal's really upgraded that side for them, but I don't think that's going to be easy. And Teague also complicates it because he's a veteran presence who scored a lot of touchdowns in scarlet and gray, but everyone in this program has seen there's probably not a lot more room for him to grow beyond what he's already given. So do you want someone who has that most experience to lead the unit, or are you ready to hand it off to these other 3?
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting part of what's coming because, again, this is different. This is a different conversation probably if Justin Fields was the quarterback opening the season and playing against Oregon, right? I mean, you may be able to take a few more risks and play the younger guys. But what you're going to do, I think, for Ohio State is let kids determine if they're going to play themselves out of playing time, putting the ball on the deck, not going hard in practice, not being able to, pass protect. These little parts of the game that are different than just carrying the football are going to ultimately separate who's going to be on the field in crunch time and who's not. And, for young kids, especially young running backs, it is one of the biggest adjustments is understanding in high school, TreVeyon Henderson doesn't get touched, in college, he's going to get hit. And how do you hold on to the football? How do you make sure you don't, cost your team possessions? And those are the types of things that are really going to separate people. And Trey Henderson, we've talked to a number of people this spring. Everyone raved about the kid, but everyone is also expecting there to be that wall that kids hit in the summer when they have enrolled early and they're finally everything's sort of catching up. And now you got to see if he can plow through that and play through. J.K. Dobbins was able to do so. But again, J.K. Dobbins only had a 75% healthy Mike Weber that he was competing against. And that's why Tony Alford is one of the, country's premier running back coaches. You got to balance it, but you also need to make sure that kids prove that they belong on the field, not just star rankings.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason why I've already predicted Marcus Crowley. You picked Mayan Williams. It won't surprise me if Master Teague starts the first couple drives against Minnesota because it's on the road. It's the first game for a new quarterback. You got new offensive linemen, and then you've got this steady hand. You know exactly what you're going to get from Master Teague at running back, and the other guys are going to have to prove themselves in the time that they get on the field. But you just wonder if that's the way Ohio State's going to approach this. It's an interesting dynamic in the room right now because those first two games are not Akron, Buffalo, and Youngstown State. It's at Minnesota against Oregon. And you don't want the mistakes to come then because, that could cost you your entire season. But at the same time, you don't want to limit your offense and what you can do because you have that known commodity with that proven ceiling in Master Teague. So it's interesting to see how they're going to handle all of this come fall.
Yeah, I don't want anyone to ever listen to this or watch this and think that we are saying Master Teague hasn't done great things for Ohio State or been a great player or, a teammate. But, teams like Minnesota, he's been able to run all over in his career at Ohio State. So maybe you do put him out there. But I think that ultimately what we've seen out of Master Teague and what Austin said is the ceiling has been reached. I don't know that there's really much more he can do as far as changing his running style. And in those games against the really twitchy, athletic defenses, the Buckeyes need something a little different. They need someone that's a bit more dynamic. And so maybe you go out with Minnesota and you let Master get the bulk of those carries because what he is a proven commodity in those games. But what that means for Oregon, what that means for Penn State, and what that means for Michigan down the road, it changes.
Well, I think that they're in an awkward position with that, with the way that the schedule is set up, because as you said, there is evidence that Master Teague can rack up some yards against teams in the Big Ten, some of the lesser competition. You can do that. But if you're trying to get ready, obviously you have to win that game. I'm not taking Minnesota for granted. I already said that could be tough. Go on the road. A team that's going to play hard and have a lot to prove in prime time. All that stuff being said, Oregon's a much stiffer challenge. And so if you're Ohio State, you're Tony Alford, you're Ryan Day, how do you get ready for that game? Who needs to have the 20 to 30 touches coming out of the backfield to win a game that should be much more competitive and into the fourth quarter? You need to find out what Travion Henderson is going to be able to do. You need to see if Marcus Crowley is back to what he was in November of 2019. You need to know, the way that we talk about Mayan Williams, it's like he already showed and proved to everybody what he can do. Well, we're talking about like 5 carries.
Yeah.
A very small sample size, which was exciting and definitely encouraging about his future, but by no means making him a guarantee or a finished product. So, that's, I think there's such a difficult balancing act that Ohio State's going to have to do, because as you said, you want to stand on the goal line against Master Teague, you're going to lose. He can be one of the best short yardage running backs in the country. And I don't mean that as a slight. It's not a limit. We know he's also really fast. Ohio State, sometimes you get a peek into those testing numbers. He's one of the fastest players on the roster. You get him going straight away or stand against him in the goal line, he's going to win some of those matchups. He's going to run over you or he's going to run away from you. The problem is cutting diagonally. Sometimes it's been quick decision-making, lateral movement. It's like trying to turn a bus. It's not going to happen quickly for him. So there's certainly a role for him to play. And of course, he's got great leadership and is one of the hardest workers. But in terms of making Ohio State a national title contender, the last 2 years have already showed that's probably not going to happen with him.
Yeah. I think you have to be realistic about it. And our job is obviously to be objective. And again, Master Teague has been a great leader on that football team. And he's perhaps his most important role this year is making sure that he stays a great leader and understanding his role in mentoring Travion Henderson, his role in mentoring Mayan Williams and keeping Mayan Williams, who came into Ohio State. When we saw Mayan Williams, you remember the day we saw him on his official visit for the Ohio State-Penn State game in 2019, and he was about 245, 250 pounds. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, I don't know if this kid is going to be able to take care of himself to be a Big Ten running back. And you've seen that he's able to do that to this point. And now you got someone like Master Teague who works tirelessly on making sure his body is ready, despite the injury to the Achilles and all those things. And he's been a freak at Ohio State as far as his leadership. And that's maybe his most important role as he heads into the senior year, because talent-wise, he probably has been passed up. And that's totally okay. And I think that I hope people don't hear that and think that, we're putting the kid down, because he's a great leader and exactly what you want out of a college football teammate. But if Ohio State's job is to win the national championship this year, and that's their goal every year, we know that may not be his path.
Yeah, and he can get you to that stage. He can. He's shown that he can win you a Big Ten championship and get you there. Once you get there, you've got to have another gear. You've got to be able to get that extra yardage against Clemson, like Trey Sermon did last year when it's 3rd and 10, when they're way backed up, and he gets 11 yards. When it's 4th and 4 and you need 5 yards and you hand the ball off, you got to be able to get there against those twitchy defenses, like you said, Berm.
Only James Franklin is handing the ball off on 4th and 5, just as a reminder.
But I agree, but he can get you there. Can he finish that job? And I don't know if he can. And so that's why this is this is such an interesting dynamic in this running back room, because you've got multiple guys. All 6 of these guys can get you to the college football playoff. Who can win it? That's the question.
I still think that Steel Chambers helping Ohio State get to the playoff would probably best be suited at linebacker. It's when we talk about all these guys and balancing between 4 carries, and Byrne brought up Evan Pryor, that's going to have to be, some limited packages, but Ohio State will want him to touch the football with his, sort of dynamic skill set, whether that's in the slot or some of the H pivot kind of stuff to go way back. We'll see exactly how that plays out.
Yeah, I think you could see Evan Pryor sort of fill the niche that Curtis Samuel filled when he was in his freshman and early part of his sophomore year. You want to get that kid the ball, and I don't like to use the cliche stuff in space, but you want to get him the ball when he's moving forward and let him run. He's a burner, and he's a home run hitter. And ultimately, guys, Ohio State's offense, despite what we've seen the last 3 years because of Dwayne Haskins and Justin Fields, the Buckeyes want to be a running team. They want to be a successful run first offense. And it's more important than ever because there is no Dwayne Haskins, there is no Justin Fields. And we have unproven commodities at quarterback with CJ Stroud, Kyle McCord, and Jack Miller. And Tony Alford's going to earn his money.
He is. He's got a lot to do heading into August. There's still a lot of work to be done in this offseason. We're going to keep breaking down these positions for Ohio State all summer long until we get back to business with training camp. He's Berm. That's Spencer Holbrook. I'm Austin Ward. If you're buying a new or used car in Central Ohio, you got to go to Buyers Auto. They sponsor all of this for us, whether that's whatever we're going to call it, the off-season report, practice previews, I don't know, whatever. It's brought to you by Buyers Auto. We'll be back next week with another position. Stay tuned for full Ohio State coverage all year long at lettermenrow.com.